Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday. It's 10 o'clock. It's time for 10 with Tim. Each day, Monday through Friday, we take 10 minutes and we go verse by verse through the Word of God together. And I appreciate you so much for being with me. Facebook Live, YouTube, wherever you join me, whenever you join me, I appreciate your friendship and your partnership in the Word of God more than anything I can say. So thank you. Gosh, I should just sort of, waste some time here at the beginning because we're in Genesis chapter 38 today. I apologize. Not really. I mean, it's the Word of God. It's here. I know some of you, do 10 with Tim, so you don't have to watch, like whatever trash is on television. But chapter 38's got it all, y'all. I mean, whatever, HBO, Showtime have, Genesis chapter 38 has it worse. This is a rough chapter. Let's see what we can do with it. Obviously, yesterday, Joseph is sold to the house of Potiphar. So we're waiting, for that story to pick up. But we have this interlude, this chapter 38, which is the story of Judah, one of the sons of Jacob, one of Joseph's brothers. Now, remember, these are the tribes of Israel now. When you say Judah, it is a man, it's a patriarch, you could say, but he's the patriarch of a tribe, and not just a tribe. The tribe of Judah becomes one of the most prominent tribes, just the royal tribe, the predominant tribe. This is the tribe from which the Messiah is going to come. I mean, we've read the Gospel of Matthew together. You know that Jesus comes from the tribe of Judah, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So it's that Judah. So in some ways, if you read it backwards like that, you just remember who this is, then you may sort of begin to understand why this chapter matters, because part of the tension, the question hanging over this chapter is Judah going to have any heirs at all? I mean, that's what's hanging in the balance. I know it kind of reads like a really bad, dime store, sexy novel, but that's the question here. Is he going to have any heirs at all, Judah? And so in the beginning of the chapter, he marries this Canaanite woman named Shua, and then they have 3 sons. So far, so good, right? They named the first boy Er, the second boy Onan, and the third boy, to show how bad times were, they had run out of boys' names, so they named their third son Shelah. I'm sorry. His name is Sheila. And so there you go. Well, it turns out that the first son, they arranged for him to marry a woman named Tamar. Okay, so hang on to that. She is married to the firstborn son. His name is Er. Her name is Tamar. But Er is such a wicked man, and we're not even told what makes him so wicked. It's just he's so wicked that, God can't stand the sight of him, so God, rubs him out. So God removes him. And so at that point, she's given then to Onan as a wife. Now, understand, this is an important ancient custom. It's also a biblical custom. It's called levirate, Levirate, levirate marriage. It comes from the Latin word lavir, which means brother-in-law. And so as the custom goes, if a woman is widowed, and she's still of childbearing age, and she has no male heirs, no sons, then it is her responsibility to stay in the husband's family. And it's that family's responsibility to see to it that she is cared for. So she is given as a wife to her dead husband's brother, to her brother-in-law, right? And so that's why in this story, Tamar is given to Onan. It's the next brother, and it's Onan's responsibility to provide for her a male heir so that she won't be destitute. You understand? A woman without a man to care for her, a woman without a husband or without a son, she can't just go get a job at the Waffle House. She has nothing, no hope. And so it's very important for the protection of women that they have this sort of safety net. And so the Levirate custom allows for the protection of women in that way. So Tamar is given to Onan. But Onan, again, in playing with this theme of intrigue and selfishness and waywardness and the rivalry between brothers, Onan, now that his older brother is dead, Onan now is in line as the firstborn. He's going to receive all of the inheritance that was belonging to his brother. But if he gives Tamar a son, then understand all of that goes to the son. And so Onan, being greedy and not being willing to fulfill this obligation, let's just say he refuses to impregnate Tamar. He doesn't refuse to lay with her, he just refuses to impregnate her. You can read the story for yourself. And so God kills him. God rubs out Onan. Same thing. It's because of his wickedness. God removes him. And so now only one left is that little boy Sheila, the boy named Sheila, who's apparently still, in diapers or whatever. He's too young to be married. But now Judah isn't really wanting to marry a third son to Tamar because he doesn't really understand God's role in this. He just thinks Tamar is like really bad luck, and he doesn't want to lose another son with this, black widow. And so he tells her to go back to her father's house and live as a widow. Okay, understand, that's important. To live as a widow means to live in sexual purity. She can't be with another man. She has to remain sexually pure because at this point, she's sort of technically betrothed to Sheila. Although Judah has no intention ever of honoring that obligation. You see that? And so this is what leads Tamar to the desperation that she finds herself. And again, none of this is good. None of this is like, hey, good idea, you do this. None of this is good. Judah himself, his wife Shua dies, and so Judah becomes a widower. He spends the proper time in grieving, but then he snaps out of it when it's time for the sheep shearing festival. As you know, that's always a big deal. Always a festival. And so Judah, he's done grieving now. He puts on his, fancy clothes and goes off to celebrate with the festival, right? That's sort of in contrast, of course, to yesterday when we were saying that Jacob was going to grieve for the rest of his life, the loss of his son Joseph. There's a contrast there I think you're supposed to see. All right, so as you know, Tamar realizes that her father-in-law is coming to town. She realizes that he has not been honest or faithful in fulfilling his obligation, and so she deceives this plan. She comes up with this plan to deceive him. She plays the part of a prostitute, makes herself available, and ends up seducing her father-in-law. Now, there is some evidence in certain parts of the Middle East, the ancient East, that the father-in-law could, as a part of that Levirate custom, give his daughter-in-law a child, but the Old Testament strictly forbids that. And so in the Jewish custom, I don't think that was acceptable. It's, I think, clearly not acceptable. And so at any rate, Judah impregnates his daughter-in-law Tamar. He has no idea, right? When they're negotiating, the deed, how much do you charge, kind of thing. They come out with the idea that I'll have sex with you if you give me a goat. She's not exactly a high-class hooker, if it's a goat, but anyway. So there you go. He's going to give her a goat. She says, well, how am I going to know that you're going to bring me a goat because you don't have a goat on you? And so that's when she gets his signet, that he would wear around his neck, and a couple of personal items, his staff. It's the things that would absolutely identify him. She's shrewd. It ain't good, but she's shrewd. You know how the story goes. She shows up pregnant later. Now, I think the New Living Translation is a little confusing because it says in verse 24, when they come back to Judah and say, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, she's acted like a prostitute. They don't know that she literally acted like a prostitute. What they mean is she was supposed to live as a widow, but she's played the whore. She has been sexually promiscuous. That's what they're saying. They don't know what she did. Right? You understand that distinction? That's why I said she was supposed to live as a widow. That means to live in sexual integrity, right? And so as the story goes, he says, okay, kill her, burn her, which is just insane. She reveals, of course, the fact that, hey, you happen to be, the baby daddy, and the story. It's interesting here how Judah, I don't know if he's necessarily repentant, but he realizes that she out of desperation was only trying to do what he was actually obligated to do for her. So in some ways, her desperation, again, it's awful, but her desperation reveals to him the fact that he had not been honest, he not been faithful. So in some ways, Judah may be under some sort of character transformation. It's hard to root for him at this point. Chapter 38 is his lowest point. He's going to look better at the end of the story. I guess, Lord willing, we all will. But anyway, that's chapter 38, you guys. It's just absolutely insane. She has two sons, two twins. Again, it's sort of a theme. Man, the labor must have been something else. A hand pops out. They put a wrist, a bracelet on it so they can identify the firstborn. The hand goes back in and another baby pops out. Anyway, as you know, the babies are Perez and Zerah. And Perez, of course, finds himself in the royal lineage in the tribe of Judah, and also in the royal lineage of the Messiah, Jesus himself. My goodness, what a goat rodeo that chapter is. But again, I remind you, it has to do with that question of, because we all know, when you're reading it, and the ancient Jews would have known, this is Judah, the tribe of Judah, the lineage of David and all of that, and again, for the longest time, it looks like he's not going to have any offspring at all. It's just this picture of how God's purposes prevail despite all human wickedness and craziness and cantankerousness. It's amazing that God, it's a testimony to his power that he can work out his purposes in the mess and muddle of human life. But God uses, messed up, crazy people, because that's the only kind of people that there is. Man, we're all sinners. Anyway, that's today. It's not going to get much better tomorrow, y'all, but we have a better example tomorrow. Part of what chapter 38 does is just set up this contextual picture of this sexually, open and an awful sort of culture, because you're about to see a very different kind of man in Genesis chapter 39, which is where we'll be tomorrow. Chapter 39, verses 1 to 23. I went way too long on a chapter that we should have covered pretty briefly. But anyway, there it is. I love you guys. See you tomorrow, Lord willing, 10 o'clock for 10 with Tim.